Chosen one, you did not post a long announcement. You did not call a meeting to explain your growth. You simply went quiet, and heaven paid attention. There was a time when every decision ran through other people's opinions first. You wondered, will they approve? Will they stay? Will they clap for this version of me? That internal courtroom kept you on trial every day, waiting for a verdict that never really satisfied your soul. Then something shifted, not in the comments, not in the room, but inside your spirit. You started to feel a holy tiredness of chasing applause that always expired, likes that didn't heal you, approval that never lasted past the moment. And instead of explaining yourself, you chose something that scared the old you: silence. That silence was not weakness. It was God pulling you out of the crowd so he could talk to you without interruptions. In the quiet, you began to see how much of your life had been edited to keep other people comfortable, and how little of it had actually been surrendered to what God was asking you to do. Heaven noticed the exact moment you stopped living for their "well done" and began to crave his. You stopped rehearsing how to impress them and started asking, "Lord, what do you want from me even if nobody claps?" That was the day your silence became louder in the spirit than all of your old explanations ever were. Now, the ones who used to read you easily feel like they don't recognize you anymore. They call it distance, mood, pride, or change. Heaven calls it alignment, because you are no longer seeking to be chosen by people who were never your source in the first place. When you stopped chasing their approval, heaven did not see rebellion. Heaven saw repentance, a turning away from the idol of being liked and a turning back to the one whose "well done" actually holds weight. There is a kind of slavery that looks pretty on the outside. It smiles, serves, over-explains, over-performs. Yet underneath, every move is controlled by one quiet fear. If they are not pleased with me, I am nothing. You lived in that invisible prison for so long that anxiety started to feel like personality, and constant overthinking started to feel like being responsible. But something in your spirit began to revolt. The more you tried to keep everyone comfortable, the more your own soul felt strangled. You realized if you have to betray what God is asking you to be just to keep their approval, then their approval is too expensive. That is when your silence started to preach. You answered fewer texts not out of arrogance, but out of obedience. You stopped explaining every boundary, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understood. You are accountable to God for your life, not to the committee of people who were never going to be satisfied anyway. Heaven watched you delete drafts you wrote just to defend yourself. You erased the long explanations. You let some people misunderstand you and handed the need to be seen as right back to God. In that unseen exchange, your identity shifted from approval seeker in a costume of humility to someone who quietly lives for an audience of one. Chosen one. When you stopped seeking their approval, life did not suddenly become easier. In some ways it became more intense, because without the noise of everyone else's opinions, you were finally left alone with your own. You started to notice how deeply approval-seeking had wired itself into your daily habits. How often you apologized for things that were not wrong just to keep the peace. How many times you said yes while your spirit was screaming no, afraid that one boundary would make you too much or too distant. Heaven watched you confront that pattern, not with self-hate, but with holy honesty. You began to see that this was never just your personality or your Enneagram type. It was a survival system built around fear, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of not being chosen. And God loved you too much to let fear keep writing the script of a life he paid for with freedom. So the Spirit started separating voices inside you. On one side, the voice that sounded like every crowd you ever tried to impress, loud, urgent, easily offended. On the other, A quieter voice that did not beg, did not pressure, did not manipulate, just kept saying, "This is who you are in me. This is what I placed in you. This is where I am leading you." At first, that quieter voice felt almost wrong because it did not panic when people pulled away. It did not obsess over who misunderstood you or who silently unfollowed your life. Instead, it kept redirecting your attention from, "Do they still approve of me?" to, "Am I still aligned with what God told me in the secret place?" That is when your identity began to unhook from the crowd. You stopped measuring your worth by how quickly people responded, how loudly they praised you, or how many needed you to feel important. You started measuring it by something far more stable. The fact that before you ever performed for anyone, heaven had already stamped you with value, calling you chosen, set apart, and seen. This is what your silence has been doing. It has been detoxing you from counterfeit confirmations so you can recognize the voice of God without a filter. Piece by piece, He has been removing your dependency on unstable approval and replacing it with a steady, unshakable knowing. Even if they never understand this version of you, God does, and He is the one rewriting you. The moment you stopped seeking approval, the atmosphere around you shifted, even before you had the words to explain what was happening. People who were used to reading you like an open book suddenly couldn't predict you anymore. Your yes began to mean yes, your no began to mean no, and that alone exposed who was there for your heart versus who was there for your compliance. Some pulled back quietly, almost offended by your peace. They were not used to you answering from conviction instead of consensus. The version of you they benefited from was the one who overexplained, overgave, and overperformed just to keep their comfort intact. Now, standing in the silent approval of God, you were no longer as easy to manipulate, and that felt like you changed to those who only knew how to love you when you were tired, apologizing, and available on demand. Heaven, however, calls this shift something different: maturity. When your worth is no longer negotiated in every room, you stop entering spaces as a beggar and start walking in as an heir. You listen more than you explain. You observe more than you chase. You discern energy and motives, not from paranoia, but from a newfound inner stability that does not need everyone to agree in order for you to obey what God said. This is why your silence feels so loud now. Without you trying, it confronts every place where people were secretly feeding on your insecurity. They feel the difference between the old you, who needed to be chosen, and the new you, who understands, if God already chose me, then any room that requires me to abandon myself to belong is not my assignment. You are not colder, you are clearer. You are not arrogant, you are anchored. The same heart that used to overextend itself just to stay loved is now learning to pour from a place of overflow instead of emptiness. You love better now because you are no longer secretly asking people to do for your identity what only God's approval was ever designed to do. Heaven sees this as promotion, not distance, because a chosen one who no longer lives for public recognition becomes dangerous in the best way. You become free to say no when God says no, even if the crowd says yes. Free to step into assignments that don't look impressive online but carry eternal weight. Free to walk in rooms without shrinking, knowing you are not there to audition for worth, you are there to represent the one who already gave it to you. Walking in God's approval means your secret life now carries more weight than your public one. You are no longer obsessed with how things look. You are focused on how things are when no one is watching. You pray more than you post. You obey quietly more than you announce loudly. Your confidence comes from knowing, my Father saw that, even when nobody else did. This shift changes how you move through relationships. You stop over-investing in connections that demand you betray your convictions just to keep the peace. Instead, you start asking one simple question before every yes. Does this align with what God has been whispering to me in the quiet, or does it drag me back into the prison of needing to be liked? You notice your decisions becoming simpler, even if they are not easier. You give when God prompts you, not when guilt manipulates you. You serve without needing your name tagged or your effort broadcasted, because the reward you are after now is internal. Peace, alignment, that deep sense of, I did what he asked, not, they think I'm amazing. This is also why your path may look lonelier for a season. Chosen ones who live for God's approval often walk roads that crowds do not understand, because the assignment came from a place the crowd never heard. God will sometimes pull you out of circles that fed your ego but starved your spirit, not to punish you, but to prepare you, until you can stand in a room without needing its applause to believe what he already said about you. In this new walk, you start to feel a different kind of power, not the loud, showy type, but a steady authority that comes from alignment. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry weight because they are not filtered through, will they still like me? But through, is this faithful to what God has given me to say? And slowly, your life becomes a quiet contradiction to the culture. While the world chases visibility at any cost, you are learning the art of hidden faithfulness, doing the right thing when nobody is clapping, trusting that the one who sees in secret is shaping a future for you that no human approval could ever manufacture. Chosen one. Heaven did not just notice that you changed in silence. Heaven approved it. Every moment you chose obedience over image, truth over performance, and God's whisper over the crowd's opinion became a documented shift in the spirit. You did not see paperwork, you did not hear trumpets, but in the courts of heaven, your file was updated. No longer driven by fear of rejection, now led by fear of the Lord. You thought this season of quiet was you losing yourself, but God has been restoring your real self, the version of you that existed in his heart before you ever learned to perform. He has been weaning you off the drug of human validation so you can finally taste the stability of his approval. Because you cannot walk in divine purpose while still begging for human permission to be who he said you are. There is a reason your life has felt hidden and misunderstood. Chosen ones are often trained in silence, so their roots go deeper than their platform. God used the lack of applause to purify your motives, to prove to you that you are not doing this for likes, shares, or claps. You are doing this because something in you said, even if no one comes with me, I'm still going with God. Now heaven is shifting you from survival in silence to assignment with authority. You are not coming out of this season to go back to proving yourself. You are coming out to walk in what has already been approved over you. The same God who watched you change in the dark is about to trust you with things that require exactly that level of inner stability. Rooms you once would have bowed to, people you once would have chased, weights you once would have dropped because you were too busy trying to be liked. So here is the line heaven is drawing for you now. You are not allowed to shrink back into the version of you that needed to be understood to obey. God is calling you to walk as someone who knows deeply that identity comes before approval, and that your identity was settled the moment he called you chosen. From this point on, every room, every relationship, every opportunity will be filtered through this truth. If it costs me the awareness of God's approval to keep theirs, it is not from him. Chosen one. Heaven saw you change in silence. Heaven approved that change. Now heaven is asking you to live like that approval is enough, and to walk forward as if the next chapter of your life has already been stamped, chosen, protected, and sent. Heaven is not confused about you. You may feel like you are still in process, still untangling old habits of people-pleasing and quiet over-explaining, but God has already stepped forward with a clear verdict over your life. Chosen, approved, appointed. There are things you did in silence that nobody will ever fully understand. The apology you never got, but forgave anyway. The room you walked away from without making a scene. The conversation you held back because the Holy Spirit said, "Say nothing, let me speak for you." Those moments did not disappear into the dark. They were recorded, and they shifted more in your future than any public performance ever could. You have been asking, did that really matter? Did anyone see what that cost me? Heaven's answer is, yes, your restraint mattered. Your obedience when it felt unfair mattered. Your decision to keep walking with God when it looked like nothing was changing on the outside has already moved things in the spirit that you have not seen yet with your eyes. This is why God is so firm right now about you not going back to the old version of you. You cannot step into what is next while still auditioning for rooms that never had the authority to name you. You cannot carry a calling that was born in silence and then let it be negotiated by people who only knew you in your performance era. What God has put on you does not require their confirmation. It requires your agreement. So here is the call that heaven is placing in your hands. Walk like someone who has already been picked, not like someone trying to be noticed. Make decisions from identity, not for identity. Let your yes be rooted in what God has already spoken over you, not in who might clap for it. You changed in silence. God noticed when you stopped needing to be the favorite and started needing to be faithful. Now your life is entering a chapter where His approval will open doors that no human vote can shut, and close doors that your old insecurity would have begged to keep open. Chosen one. This is your confirmation. You don't need their permission to be who God has called you to be. You are already walking with the only yes that truly counts, and heaven is asking you to move like that is finally enough. This is the part where the message stops just describing your process and starts commissioning you. Heaven is not only comforting you about what you went through, it is instructing you on how to move from here on out. You did something in silence that God had been waiting on for a long time. You broke agreement with the version of you that needed to be picked by people to feel picked by Him. That shift did not just heal your heart, it altered your trajectory. There are timelines you will never touch again. Timelines built on begging, proving, defending, over-explaining, because that version of you is no longer available. From now on, your life is not an audition. It is an assignment. You are not sending out applications to be loved. You are answering a call that was placed on you before anyone had an opinion about you. Every room you enter, every conversation you have, every connection you make will now be filtered through this lens. Am I moving like someone God has chosen, or like someone still trying to convince people I am worth choosing? This is your invitation to move differently. Stop explaining your growth to people committed to misunderstanding it. Stop shrinking to fit versions of yourself that God has already asked you to outgrow. Stop waiting for a round of applause to confirm a step God already told you to take in prayer. Chosen one, the streets, the rooms, the atmospheres will feel this new you. You will walk quieter, but your presence will say more. You will choose peace over performing, truth over image, alignment over popularity. Some will say you changed as an accusation, but heaven will document it as transformation. So here is the charge. Move like everything really is working out for you, because you are no longer moving under the verdict of people. You are moving under the verdict of God. Wake up like someone who has already been chosen. Decide like someone who no longer needs to be chased to believe they are worth keeping. Walk like someone who knows. The only approval you truly needed, you already have. Chosen one. If this word has been reading your private life more than your public one, that's not an accident. It's because you are the kind of person God trains in silence and then uses in public. Here's a CTA in full marked and chosen tone in American English, ready for the end of this video. Chosen one. If something in you knows, this was for me, do not ignore that. This is not just another video in your feed, it is a reminder that heaven is still investing in you. If this message located you, confirm it. Drop "I receive it" or "I'm done seeking approval" in the comments to seal in the natural what God has already started in the spiritual. Do not walk this journey alone. Subscribe to Marked and Chosen and turn on the notifications, because this is not a random word. It is a sequence of trainings for those who know they are set apart, even if they still feel hidden. And if you know someone who is silently trapped in needing everyone's approval, send this video to them today. You have no idea what kind of quiet chain this word could break in their life. You are not just watching content, you are answering a call. So before you click away, do one simple but prophetic thing. Write in the comments, "God's approval is enough for me now," and let Him handle the rest.